Are you ready to truly improve your English listening and speaking skills? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you knew the words, but you just couldn't understand what a native speaker was saying? Or maybe you've felt that frustrating hesitation, that moment of panic, when you want to express yourself clearly, but the right words just won't come out. In today's very special and detailed episode, we are going to dive deep into these exact challenges and give you the tools and the confidence to overcome them. Welcome to English in Fluency. My name is Alex, and I am so glad you've decided to join our community. Here, our goal is simple. We want to help you improve your English naturally and effectively. In this episode, you will hear detailed, real-life stories filled with useful vocabulary and expressions that people actually use every single day. By listening closely to these stories, you will train your ear to understand the natural rhythm and speed of spoken English. And by repeating the phrases along with me, you will build the muscle memory you need to improve your own speaking skills, making you sound more natural and feel more confident. Let's begin with a simple question to get us started. Have you ever had a moment, just one single moment, when you completely misunderstood someone speaking in English? Think about it. Perhaps you were trying to order food in a busy restaurant, and the waiter brought you something completely different from what you asked for. Or maybe you were in a conversation with a new colleague from work, and you missed a very important detail because they spoke too quickly or used a phrase you had never heard before. These situations can be more than just frustrating. They can make you feel embarrassed or even question your own abilities. But I want to tell you that this is a completely normal part of the learning journey. Let me share a personal story with you about a good friend of mine, a young man named Leo. A couple of years ago, Leo moved to Dublin, Ireland, to start his university studies. He was incredibly excited, but at the same time, he was deeply nervous about speaking English all the time. On his third day, he walked into a small, cozy bakery near his campus to buy a loaf of bread for his breakfast. He wanted a specific type of whole wheat bread, so he walked up to the counter and said with as much confidence as he could muster, "Can I have a loaf of whole wheat bread, please?" But the baker, a friendly man with a thick Irish accent, looked at him with a puzzled expression and replied, "Sorry, what was that, son?" Leo felt a flush of nervousness creep up his neck. He repeated himself, a little louder this time, enunciating each word carefully. Whole. Wheat. Bread. The baker still looked confused. He leaned in closer, cupping his ear. Leo's heart started to pound in his chest. Then, another customer in the line, a kind-looking woman, gently stepped in and said to the baker, "He's looking for the brown bread, Jerry." Suddenly, the baker's face lit up in understanding. "Ah, the brown bread! Of course!" He grabbed a loaf and handed it to Leo with a warm smile. In that moment, Leo learned a powerful lesson. It wasn't just about knowing the words, it was about pronunciation and local vocabulary. He knew the term whole wheat, but in that specific context, in that part of Dublin, the common term was simply brown bread. And the way he pronounced wheat might have sounded slightly different to the baker's ear. He realized that the English he had learned from his textbooks was a starting point, but the English spoken on the streets, in the shops, and in real-life life was a completely different world. This is precisely why listening practice is so fundamentally important. The more you immerse yourself in listening to real, everyday English, the more natural and familiar it will all become. Your brain starts to recognize patterns, rhythms, and the common phrases that people use without even thinking. And when you hear these phrases over and over again, you will begin to feel much more confident using them yourself in your own conversations. Now, let's explore another very common real-life situation that my cousin, Clara, experienced when she moved to Toronto, Canada, for a new job opportunity. Clara's English was very good on paper. She had scored high on all her language tests, but when she arrived, she found it incredibly difficult to follow group conversations. People spoke so quickly, they used a lot of slang she didn't understand, and they often interrupted each other in a friendly, overlapping way that was completely new to her. One day, she was in a very important team meeting, and her manager, a man named Mr. Harrison, turned to her and said, "Clara, can you touch base with Michael about the new project report before the end of the day?" Clara was completely baffled. Touch base? What could that possibly mean? Her mind raced. Should she literally go and touch something on his desk? Was it a Canadian custom she was unaware of? She felt too embarrassed to ask for clarification in front of everyone, so she just nodded and hoped she could figure it out later. After the meeting, she discreetly asked a colleague, who explained that touch base simply means to check in with someone, to have a brief conversation or discussion about something. This small, simple phrase made a world of difference in her understanding of the workplace culture. After that day, she started to pay much closer attention to the idioms and expressions that her colleagues used in their daily conversations. So, here is a very practical tip for you, inspired by Clara's experience. When you hear a new phrase or an idiom, don't just try to memorize its definition from a dictionary. That's only half the battle. Instead, listen very carefully to how it is used in a real conversation. Pay attention to the context, the tone of voice of the speaker, and the situation they are in. Then, try repeating the phrase out loud to yourself. Get a feel for how it sounds and rolls off your tongue. The next step is to try using it in one of your own sentences, maybe just when you're practicing by yourself at first. The more you actively practice using these new expressions, the more natural and automatic it will feel. Now, let's take a moment to think about your own personal experiences. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't understand something in English? Perhaps you misheard a single word that changed the entire meaning of a sentence. Or maybe you weren't familiar with a particular expression. What did you do in that moment? How did you handle the confusion? Imagine for a second that you are checking into a hotel, and the receptionist at the front desk asks you with a smile, "Would you like a wake-up call?" If you have never heard this phrase before, you might be very confused. You might think they are asking if you need help waking up in general, as a concept in life. But actually, a wake-up call is a very specific service, where the hotel staff will call your room's telephone at a designated time in the morning to make sure you wake up. These small but very important moments of potential misunderstanding happen all the time in real life. That is why consistently listening to real conversations is truly the best and most effective way to improve your English skills. Let's do a quick and simple practice exercise together right now. I am going to say a short, common sentence, and I want you to listen carefully and then repeat it out loud after me. Are you ready? Let's go. I'd like to order a coffee, please. Now, it's your turn. Say it out loud. Great job. Let's try one more. This one is very useful if you don't understand something. Could you repeat that, please? Now you try. Fantastic. These are simple, polite, and incredibly useful phrases that you can use in countless everyday situations. The more you practice listening and repeating, the more your confidence will grow, and you'll find that speaking English becomes less of a challenge and more of a natural part of your communication. Now, let's continue with another detailed, real-life story. A few years ago, a friend of mine named Ben made a big move to London for a fantastic new job. He was absolutely thrilled. It was his lifelong dream to work for an international company in a bustling city like London. He had studied English diligently for many years, but his learning had been mostly academic. He had focused on grammar rules, vocabulary lists, and reading classic literature. He honestly believed he was fully prepared for the challenge. However, when he arrived in London, he faced an unexpected and humbling reality. Real-life conversations were much harder to understand than he had ever anticipated. On his very first day at the new office, his manager, a cheerful woman named Sarah, introduced him to the entire team. Everyone was warm and friendly, but they spoke at a pace that felt like a whirlwind to Ben. They used a multitude of expressions and colloquialisms that he had never encountered in any of his textbooks. During the lunch break, one of his new co-workers, a young man named Jake, clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Ben, let's go grab a bite." Ben was completely thrown. "Grab a bite?" he thought to himself. "Grab what? What does that even mean? A bite of what?" He hesitated for a long moment, a nervous smile frozen on his face, and finally managed to say, okay." He followed Jake and a few others to a nearby sandwich shop, still feeling completely unsure about what was happening. When they arrived and everyone started ordering sandwiches and salads, he finally understood. Grab a bite was just a very casual, common way of saying, "Let's go and get something to eat." It was such a simple, everyday phrase, but because he had never heard it used in a real, spontaneous conversation, it had completely confused him. That day, Ben realized that even though his vocabulary was extensive and his grammar was solid, he needed much more practice listening to how people actually speak in their daily lives. So, Ben decided to create a proactive plan for himself. Every single morning on his commute to work, he started listening to English podcasts that featured natural conversations between hosts. At lunchtime, instead of sitting alone at his desk, he made a conscious effort to join his co-workers in the break room and participate in their conversations. At first, it was incredibly difficult. He often didn't understand everything they were talking about, and he sometimes felt too nervous to speak up, afraid he would say the wrong thing. But instead of remaining silent, he started to ask clarifying questions. He would say things like, "Sorry, what does that mean exactly?" Or, "Could you say that again? I didn't quite catch it." His co-workers were more than happy to explain things to him, and slowly, little by little, his ability to understand them improved dramatically. One day, a few weeks later, he was sitting in a team meeting, and his manager, Sarah, said, "All right, everyone, let's wrap things up for today." This time, instead of feeling lost and confused, Ben knew exactly what she meant. Wrap things up meant it was time to finish the meeting. He smiled to himself, feeling a small surge of pride, because just a few weeks earlier, he would have had no idea what that phrase meant. This story holds a very important lesson for anyone who is learning English. Sometimes, the individual words themselves are not difficult at all, but the way people combine them and say them in real conversations can be very different from what you learn in a formal classroom setting. That is why active listening practice is so incredibly vital. The more you listen to natural, conversational English, the more comfortable and confident you will feel when it's your turn to speak. Now, let's think about another real-life situation that many of you might encounter. Imagine you are traveling to an English-speaking country for the very first time. You arrive at the airport after a long flight, and you have to go through immigration control. The immigration officer looks at your passport and asks you a standard question. What's the purpose of your visit? If you are not familiar with this specific phrase, you might feel a surge of panic. What do they mean by purpose? Are they asking about my entire life's purpose? My job? My reason for traveling? What am I supposed to say? But if you have practiced listening to common travel conversations, you will know that the expected answer is something very simple and direct, like I'm here for tourism, or I'm visiting my family. A few months ago, my cousin Sophia traveled to Australia for a holiday. She was generally very confident in her English skills, but when she arrived at the airport in Sydney, she got incredibly nervous. The immigration officer, a serious-looking man, asked her, "Do you have anything to declare?" Sophia froze for a moment. The word declare sounded so formal and serious, like something related to law or a court. Her mind started racing. Did I accidentally bring something illegal into the country? Am I in some kind of trouble? She took a deep breath to calm her nerves and asked politely, "I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?" The officer, seeing her confusion, calmly rephrased the question. "Are you carrying any food items, alcohol, or large amounts of cash with you?" Now she understood perfectly. Declare simply meant to formally report something you are bringing into the country. She smiled with relief and said, "No, I don't have anything to declare." The officer nodded and stamped her passport, letting her pass. Later, she laughed about the whole situation. She realized that the problem wasn't her level of English. It was simply that she had never encountered that specific phrase in a real-life context before. This is exactly why listening to natural conversations is so helpful. The more you hear these common phrases used in their proper context, the easier it will become for you to understand them and respond naturally and without hesitation. Now, let's do another quick practice exercise together. I will say some common questions you might hear when you are traveling. I want you to listen carefully and then repeat them after me. Ready? Where are you traveling from? Now you say it. Excellent. Here's another one. Do you have a return ticket? Try saying it out loud. Great work. The more you practice both listening and speaking, the more confident you will feel when you find yourself in these real-life situations. Now, let's talk about another important moment where listening skills can make a huge difference. Ordering food at a restaurant or a cafe. Imagine you are in a busy, noisy cafe in the heart of London. You walk up to the counter, and the barista, who is working very quickly, says, "What can I get you?" If you are prepared, you can simply and clearly say, "I'd like a cappuccino, please." But what if they then ask, "For here or to go?" If you are not familiar with this very common phrase, you might feel confused again. A friend of mine, a man named Marco, had this exact experience when he traveled to the United States for the first time. He walked into a popular coffee shop and ordered a latte. The cashier asked him, "For here or to go?" Marco hesitated. He had never heard this phrase before in his English classes. He made an educated guess that to go might mean the same as take away, so he said to go. Luckily for him, he was correct. But in that moment, he felt very nervous because he wasn't 100% sure he had understood. After that day, he started listening very carefully to how other people ordered their food and drinks. He noticed that in the US, people often say, "Can I get a?" instead of the more formal, "I would like." He also learned that "that'll be" is a very common way for cashiers to tell you the total price of your order. For example, the cashier might say, "That'll be $5.50. If you don't recognize this phrase, you might not even realize they are telling you the price. But once you hear it a few times in context, it becomes completely natural. This is why real-life listening is so important. The more you hear these everyday phrases, the more confident you will feel when it is your turn to speak. Now, let's practice a little bit more. I will say some common phrases you might hear in a cafe. I want you to repeat them after me. "What can I get for you?" Now you say it. Great. Here's another one. "That'll be $5.50. Try saying it out loud. When you actively listen and then repeat, your brain gets used to the sounds and rhythms of English, and speaking becomes progressively easier and more automatic. Let's continue with another important area where both listening and speaking skills make a huge difference in your daily life, and that is making small talk. Small talk is that type of casual, friendly conversation you have with people in everyday situations, like when you meet someone new at a party, or when you are waiting in line at the supermarket, or even when you are riding in an elevator with a colleague. It is a skill that can feel quite difficult and even a little intimidating at first, but once you practice it, it can become one of the most valuable tools for improving your fluency and building connections in English. A few months ago, a friend of mine named Maria, who is originally from Spain, moved to an English-speaking city for her work. She had studied English for many, many years and had a strong grasp of grammar and a wide vocabulary. But she was very nervous about speaking with strangers, especially when it came to the art of making small talk. She had always thought that small talk wasn't as important as knowing the complex rules of grammar, but she quickly discovered that it was a huge and essential part of everyday social life. Her first week at her new job was a little bit stressful. At lunchtime, a friendly colleague named John invited her to join him and a few others in the break room. Maria was very unsure what she should say. She didn't know these people very well, and she was afraid that she might say the wrong thing or create an awkward silence. When they all sat down to eat, John turned to her and asked, "So, how was your weekend?" Maria froze for a second. In Spain, people often talk about what they did over the weekend, but she wasn't sure if she should share something personal or just keep her answer very simple and brief. She finally decided to play it safe and said, "It was good. I went to the park with my family." That was a safe answer, she thought. But then John smiled warmly and said, "That sounds nice. What did you do at the park?" Maria realized then that this was just like asking someone about their hobbies or their interests. It was not a deep philosophical conversation. It was simply a way to connect with another person on a human level. Over the next few days, she became much more comfortable with the idea of small talk. She started asking her coworkers simple questions like, "Are you enjoying the weather we're having?" Or, "What do you like to do in your free time?" And she was genuinely surprised at how easy and pleasant it became. Through these simple, everyday conversations, Maria realized something very important. Small talk is not just about talking. It is about listening and connecting with people. The more you practice it, the more natural it feels. And when you listen carefully to what the other person is saying, you learn so many useful phrases and expressions that will help you to speak more naturally yourself. For example, when John asked about Maria's weekend, he didn't use the formal sentence structure, "What did you do over the weekend?" Instead, he used the much more common and casual phrase, "How was your weekend?" When you hear these kinds of natural expressions in real conversations, they tend to stick in your memory, and soon enough, you will be able to use them yourself without even thinking about it. Here is another helpful tip when it comes to small talk. Often, people do not expect long, detailed answers. It is more about giving a simple response and then asking the other person a question back to keep the conversation flowing. When you are practicing, remember to listen for these small conversational cues. For instance, someone might say, "The weekend was great, but I wish it was a little bit longer." This comment shows that they are offering a little bit of personal information, but they are also leaving an open space for you to share your own experience as well. Maria started using this technique, and she found that it helped her to speak much more confidently. Instead of worrying about saying something perfect or brilliant, she focused on maintaining the back-and-forth flow of the conversation and learning new phrases along the way. One of the most useful phrases that Maria picked up during her first few weeks was the simple question, "What about you?" When someone asked her how her weekend was, she learned that it is perfectly natural to respond with something like, "It was good. Thanks for asking. What about you?" These small, everyday conversations will do wonders for your listening and speaking skills, and you will start to feel much more confident and at ease in social situations. This is something that simply cannot be learned from a textbook alone. It is about actively engaging with people, paying close attention to how they speak, and practicing how you respond. Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about something else that can often challenge English learners, and that is understanding different accents. When you are learning English, you might find it difficult to understand people with different accents or regional variations in their speech. Whether it is a British accent, an American accent, an Australian accent, or even the different accents that exist within the same country, understanding these variations is an important part of truly mastering the English language. Let's take a step back for just a moment. I want you to think about your own personal journey in learning English. Have you had those moments where you felt unsure or confused during a conversation? Maybe you were listening to someone who was speaking very quickly, or perhaps you didn't understand a particular slang word or idiom they used. It happens to every single one of us, and it is a natural part of the process of learning a new language. The key is not to give up or get discouraged. Keep practicing and keep engaging with real conversations. Every single time you listen to someone speaking English, you get a little bit better. Remember, English is not just something you learn from books. It is something you experience through conversations, through stories, and through real-life situations. Whether it is making small talk with a new friend, ordering food at a restaurant, or simply listening to someone tell a story about their day, every single moment is a chance to improve. By listening to real stories, you begin to notice the natural rhythm and music of the English language. You learn how words flow together seamlessly in sentences, how people express themselves in different situations, and how to use the right phrases at the right time. This is the kind of authentic practice that will help you sound more natural and feel more confident when you speak. When I was visiting New York City a couple of years ago, I got a little bit lost while I was walking around downtown. I decided to stop and ask someone for directions. I approached a friendly-looking person and said, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the nearest subway station?" He looked at me and replied very quickly, "Yeah, just go straight ahead, take a left at the lights, and you'll see it on your right." That seemed simple enough, but I was quite surprised at how fast he spoke. He didn't slow down to explain it to me, and I had to listen very, very carefully to catch all the details. In that moment, I realized how important it is to focus not just on the words themselves, but on how they are delivered. Native speakers often speak quickly, and they use shorthand or common expressions that you might not find in your textbooks. For instance, when the man said, "Take a left at the lights," he was using a very common phrase that means turn left at the traffic lights. It was casual and quick, but once I understood the phrase, I realized how useful it would be to remember for future conversations. To improve your skills in asking for and understanding directions, you can start by learning these common phrases and expressions. You will often hear people say things like, "Go straight," "Turn left," "It's around the corner," and "It's just a few blocks away." These are all incredibly useful phrases that you will encounter frequently. When you are practicing, listen to how native speakers use these phrases in everyday situations. By listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, or watching movies set in English-speaking cities, you will be able to hear these expressions used in many different contexts. After practicing asking for directions in English, try to imagine yourself in that situation. Maybe you are lost in a new city, and you really need to ask for help. Practicing these types of conversations in your mind, or even out loud, will help you prepare for when you are actually in that situation. Let's move on to another practical area that will help you with your listening and speaking, which is handling problems and complaints in English. This is another very important part of everyday life. Whether you are at a store, in a hotel, or during an interaction with a customer service representative, knowing how to express your problems clearly and politely is an essential skill. I had an experience a few months ago when I was staying in a hotel during a business trip. I checked into my room, but when I tried to use the Wi-Fi, it wasn't working. I called the front desk and said, "Excuse me, the Wi-Fi isn't working in my room. Could you please help me?" The receptionist on the phone replied, "I'm so sorry to hear that. Let me check and see what I can do." After a few minutes, she called me back, and explain that the Wi-Fi was temporarily down in the entire building, but they had a technician working on fixing it soon. She was very polite and apologetic, which made me feel much better about the situation. In this situation, I learned a few things that I want to share with you. First, when you have a problem, it is very important to remain calm and explain the issue as clearly as you can. You can use phrases like, "I'm having some trouble with," or "there seems to be a problem with," to describe the situation. Second, if someone else is trying to solve the problem for you, you should listen carefully to their response. They might use phrases like, "Let me check on that for you," or "I'll have someone take care of it right away." These are polite and professional ways to show that they are taking your complaint seriously. By listening to real-life situations like these, you will be better prepared to handle problems when they arise in English. The more you practice these types of conversations, the easier it will be for you to stay calm and confident when something goes wrong. And remember, never be afraid to ask for clarification if you do not understand something. You can always say, "Could you please explain that again?" Or, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat it?" Imagine walking into a bustling, vibrant cafe on a cool London morning. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries fills the air as you approach the counter. The barista greets you with a cheerful, "What can I get you today?" For a moment, you might pause. This casual, friendly phrasing might be quite different from the formal textbook language you have learned. You reply confidently, "I'd like a latte, please." Then, the barista adds, "That'll be $3.50. Would you like any pastry with that?" In that single, fleeting instant, you realize that real-life English is fast, it's friendly, and it's often wonderfully informal. Now, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, have you ever been surprised by the casual tone of a conversation in what you thought was a formal situation? How did you respond when someone used expressions that you had never practiced in a classroom? I remember one particular day when I was visiting a small artistic cafe in Shoreditch, a trendy part of London. I had expected a very polite, almost formal exchange. Yet, the friendly, informal language of the staff caught me off guard in the best way possible. This experience taught me that adapting to different conversational styles is absolutely key to understanding and participating in everyday conversation. To practice this, I want you to try imagining yourself in that very cafe. Visualize hearing the words, "What can I get you?" and then practice responding with your own order. Repeat these phrases out loud to yourself until they feel completely natural and become a part of your active, ready-to-use vocabulary. Let's move on to another very common scenario: asking for directions in a busy, confusing city. I want you to picture yourself in the middle of New York City, surrounded by the constant hum of traffic and the endless chatter of pedestrians walking by. A few years back, I found myself wandering through the vibrant electric streets of Manhattan, trying to find my way to a well-known museum. I approached a local resident and asked, "Excuse me, could you please tell me how to get to the Metropolitan Museum of Art?" The local replied quickly, "Sure, just go straight for 2 blocks, then turn left at the big intersection, and you'll see the museum on your right." I want you to listen carefully to this exchange. Notice the clear, concise instructions that were given very quickly. Ask yourself, Have you ever been in a situation where someone spoke too fast or used unfamiliar phrases when they were giving you directions? How did you handle it? If you are not sure, consider practicing by repeating the directions out loud to yourself right now. Straight for 2 blocks, left at the intersection, museum on the right. This kind of repetition builds your confidence in both understanding and using these everyday, practical phrases. Now let's explore the delicate art of making small talk, which is a fundamental part of building relationships in both personal and professional settings. I vividly recall an afternoon I spent at a local community event in London, where I met a gentleman named Arthur. He started our conversation with the simple, classic opening. "Lovely weather today, isn't it?" I responded, "Yes, it's a beautiful day. I love how the sunshine brightens everything up." That very simple exchange opened up a pleasant and lengthy discussion about our favorite outdoor activities, local parks, and plans for the upcoming weekend. I want you to think about your own experiences. What topics do you naturally bring up when you are meeting someone for the first time? You can practice small talk by asking simple questions like, "How are you today?" Or, "What have you been up to lately?" The more you practice initiating and maintaining these light conversations, the easier it becomes to keep a conversation flowing smoothly. Now, let's add another layer to this by considering professional settings. Imagine you are in a virtual meeting with colleagues from all around the world. Your manager might say something like, "Let's circle back to that point later." At first, you might wonder what "circle back" means in this context. It simply means to return to a topic or a point of discussion later in the meeting. When you encounter unfamiliar phrases like this in professional meetings, it is a great idea to jot them down and ask for clarification if you need to. Reflect for a moment. Have you ever been confused by business jargon or specific idioms used in your workplace? You can practice by repeating phrases like "circle back" until they become second nature to you. Next, let's consider the unique challenges of having phone conversations. Unlike face-to-face talks, on the phone you have to rely solely on audio cues to understand the other person. I once had to make an important phone call to resolve an issue I was having with my internet connection. The customer service representative, a man named John, said very clearly, "Can you please describe the problem you are experiencing?" I explained, "My connection keeps dropping, and it's very frustrating." John replied calmly, "I understand. Let me run a diagnostic test on your line." His calm, clear tone immediately helped me feel at ease. Picture yourself in a similar situation and practice repeating phrases like, "Could you please repeat that?" Or, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." These simple exercises can prepare you for real-life phone calls where clarity is absolutely crucial. Now, let's explore a situation that many of us face when traveling. Imagine arriving at an airport in an English-speaking country. The announcements over the intercom system might sound something like this. "Due to inclement weather, your flight will be delayed by 30 minutes. In that moment, you might feel anxious if you are not familiar with a formal phrase like inclement weather. Later, when you ask a staff member, "Could you tell me what the delay is about?" they explain, "The delay is because of bad weather conditions." Consider practicing these scenarios at home. Repeat key phrases such as "flight delayed" and "inclement weather" until you feel completely comfortable understanding and using them. Another very common everyday conversation involves discussing hobbies and personal interests. Picture a quiet evening where you meet someone new at a local event. They might ask you, "What do you enjoy doing in your free time?" You could reply, "I love reading, hiking, and trying out new recipes." This kind of conversation is a perfect opportunity to learn and use descriptive adjectives and expand your vocabulary. Think about your favorite hobby right now. What words would you use to describe it? Practicing answering these kinds of questions builds not only your vocabulary, but also your confidence in sharing your personal experiences with others. Let's engage in an interactive exercise right now. I want you to repeat these sentences after me. How are you today? What have you been up to lately? The weather is really nice, isn't it? I'd love to hear more about that. Take your time with each sentence. Practice them until they roll off your tongue effortlessly. This kind of repetition builds muscle memory for natural, flowing conversation. Switching gears, let's delve into conversations that happen at work, specifically handling meetings and presentations. I remember a meeting where our team leader said, "We need to finalize the project timeline by Friday." A colleague named Jessica then asked, "Can everyone please confirm their availability for a meeting on Thursday?" You might respond with, "I'm available on Thursday, and I'll send a calendar invite shortly." Reflect on this dialogue. Notice how clear, concise language is used to coordinate plans and schedules. If you work in a professional environment, practicing these kinds of exchanges can prepare you for real-life scenarios where accuracy and clarity are absolutely essential. Another memorable experience for me was during a business conference call. The host said, "Let's wrap up the discussion and summarize our key points." At that moment, I repeated the sentence in my head to make sure I fully understood it. After the call, I made a note to review the phrases wrap up, summarize, and key points. These are extremely common in professional settings. Ask yourself, how many times have you encountered these expressions in meetings? Now is a great time to practice them. Say them out loud until they become a natural part of your working vocabulary. Let's consider a more challenging scenario: interacting with service providers when something goes wrong. Imagine you have booked a hotel room and you find that the Wi-Fi isn't working correctly. You call the front desk and say, "Excuse me, the Wi-Fi in my room isn't working. Could you please help me?" The receptionist responds, "I'm very sorry for the inconvenience. Let me check on that for you." This exchange uses straightforward language, but it is crucial to speak clearly and listen carefully. Think about how you would handle a similar situation. Practice these key phrases and consider recording yourself to listen back and see where you might be able to improve your clarity or tone. Now, picture yourself in a local market in Australia. A vendor enthusiastically shouts, "This is a ripper deal." At first, you might wonder what on earth ripper means. Later, you learn that it is common Australian slang for something that is excellent or fantastic. This is a prime example of how listening to real-life conversations teaches you regional vocabulary and idioms that you might not find in a textbook. Reflect on any slang or idiomatic expressions you have heard recently. Write them down in a notebook and try using them in your own sentences. Over time, these expressions will become a natural and fun part of your speech. Another engaging scenario involves social gatherings with family and friends. Imagine sitting around a dinner table where everyone is sharing stories about their day. One of your relatives asks you, "What was the best part of your day today?" You might respond, "I had a wonderful conversation with a new friend I met at the cafe." This warm, informal exchange is very common in family settings. Think about the simple yet powerful words you use during these conversations. Words like wonderful, enjoyable, and delightful. Practicing these positive and expressive words in a relaxed setting builds your confidence and reinforces your natural speaking style. Now, let's talk about the important role of digital communication in modern English practice. Email, instant messaging, and video calls have become an integral part of our daily lives. For example, when you are writing a formal email for work, you might start with, "Dear Mr. Smith, I hope this email finds you well," and close with, "Sincerely, Alex." On the other hand, when you are texting a friend, you might simply write, "Hey, are we still on for dinner tonight?" Notice how the language and tone shift dramatically depending on the medium and the audience. Consider your own experiences with digital communication. Which style do you find most challenging? It is beneficial to practice both formal and informal writing to build a well-rounded and balanced skill set. Let's move on to a scenario involving cultural events. Imagine attending a local art exhibition where a curator is explaining a painting. The curator might say, "This artwork reflects the artist's inner turmoil during a time of great change." You could ask, "What inspired this particular style?" The curator might reply, "The use of bold colors and dynamic brush strokes represents the conflict between tradition and modernity." This conversation not only introduces you to artistic vocabulary, but also encourages you to practice expressing abstract ideas. Think about how you would describe a piece of art or a cultural event that you have experienced. Practicing such descriptive language can greatly enrich your vocabulary and make your conversations much more engaging and interesting. Another practical scenario is participating in academic discussions. Picture yourself in a university lecture where the professor states, "Today, we will explore the impact of global warming on urban development." After the lecture, you might approach the professor and ask, "Could you please elaborate on the strategies that cities are using to combat climate change?" This type of dialogue requires both active listening and the ability to ask thoughtful, clarifying questions. Consider how you might summarize what you have learned in your own words. This practice reinforces your understanding of the topic and prepares you for future academic conversations. In addition to these structured scenarios, spontaneous conversations are a very important part of real-life communication. Imagine you are at a community park and you overhear a group of people discussing the latest local news. One person remarks, "The new park renovations have really transformed this entire area." You might decide to join the conversation by saying, "I agree, the improvements are fantastic. Have you noticed the new playground features?" These unscripted interactions offer a wonderful chance to practice impromptu speaking and active listening. Ask yourself, when was the last time you joined a spontaneous conversation? What strategies can you use to smoothly and politely enter such discussions? Now, let's explore a scenario that many of us face online: participating in discussion forums and chat rooms. In these digital spaces, Language is often very informal, filled with abbreviations, acronyms, and emoticons. You might see a post that says something like, "Has anyone tried the new cafe downtown? It's lit." Even if the language is very casual, it still provides valuable insights into current slang and conversational style. Spend some time browsing online groups or forums that are related to your interests in English. Observe the way people interact with each other and try to incorporate some of these expressions into your own spoken or written communication. Consider also the challenge of handling disagreements or misunderstandings in a conversation. Even with clear language, miscommunications can sometimes occur. I recall a conversation I had with a friend where our opinions on a current event differed quite a bit. Instead of letting the discussion become tense or argumentative, we used phrases like, "I see your point, but I have a different perspective on this," and "Can we clarify our thoughts further to make sure we understand each other?" Using phrases like these helps to keep the conversation respectful and constructive. Reflect on any disagreements you have experienced. What language could have helped to smooth the situation? Practice using such phrases in role-playing exercises with a friend or by recording yourself until they feel comfortable and natural to use. Let's now shift to another rich source of language practice: storytelling. Telling your own story not only improves your speaking skills, but also makes your conversations much more engaging and personal. Imagine recounting a memorable day when everything went unexpectedly wrong. You could start with, "One day, I found myself completely lost in a busy city, and that experience taught me the true value of patience and resourcefulness." As you narrate the story, be sure to include vivid details. Describe the sounds you heard, the sights you saw, and even the emotions you felt. Storytelling helps you to organize your thoughts logically and express yourself in a structured and compelling manner. Think about a recent experience you have had and try to narrate it in English. This exercise will boost both your vocabulary and your confidence in speaking for longer periods. Interactive exercises are an essential part of this learning journey. I invite you now to repeat the following sentences with me, paying close attention to the natural rhythm and emphasis of the words. "I appreciate your help." Could you please repeat that? "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." "That sounds interesting." "I would love to join you." Repeat each sentence several times until it feels comfortable and natural. These exercises are specifically designed to build your muscle memory for common and useful conversational phrases. Now, I want you to imagine yourself at a live music concert. The announcer's voice, full of energy and excitement, fills the entire venue as they say, "Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for an unforgettable performance by tonight's headliner." Such vibrant expressions and high-energy announcements require you to match the speaker's enthusiasm in your own mind. Visualize yourself in that setting. What would you say if you wanted to compliment the performance? Perhaps something like, "The energy on stage is absolutely electrifying." Practicing such dynamic language can help you adjust your tone and pace to suit different emotional contexts. Next, picture yourself in a quiet, peaceful bookstore. You approach a clerk and ask, "Could you recommend a good mystery novel?" The clerk smiles and replies, "Certainly. This bestseller has a captivating plot and very intriguing characters." This simple interaction introduces you to descriptive adjectives and polite inquiries that are common in everyday conversations. How would you describe your favorite book or movie genre? Spend a few moments thinking about this and practice forming sentences that describe your interests in detail. Let's turn our attention now to public services. Imagine you are at a government office, applying for a new passport. The clerk greets you with, "Good morning. How may I assist you today?" You reply, "I need to renew my passport, please." The conversation continues with precise questions and answers, such as, "Could you please provide your current passport number?" And, "Do you have all the required documents?" These formal exchanges require you to be both clear and concise. You can practice such dialogues with a friend, or even role-play them in front of a mirror. Notice how using polite expressions like "please" and "thank you" makes the conversation smoother and more effective. Another important scenario involves visiting a healthcare facility. Imagine sitting in a doctor's office where the physician asks, "How have you been feeling recently?" You might answer, "I have been experiencing headaches and a bit of fatigue." The doctor then follows up with, "Can you describe the nature of your headaches?" Such conversations demand clear and precise communication about your symptoms. Practice describing common health issues in simple, direct language. Repeating phrases like, "I feel unwell," or "The pain is moderate and sometimes sharp," will prepare you for real-life medical discussions. Digital communication also plays a crucial role in modern English. Consider video calls, where you see not only the speaker's words but also their facial expressions and gestures. In a recent video meeting, a colleague of mine said, "Can everyone see my screen?" and quickly followed up with, "Please let me know if you have any questions." Video calls require a blend of clear speaking and active listening. You can practice these interactions by joining online webinars or virtual meetups. The more you expose yourself to different digital communication styles, the more natural they will become to you. Now, let's explore how discussing current events can enrich your language skills. Imagine listening to a news report that states, "Local communities are coming together to address recent flooding." Such statements are filled with formal language and important vocabulary. After listening, try summarizing the news in your own words. For example, the report discussed how neighborhoods are uniting to deal with severe floods. This exercise helps you process information, retain new vocabulary, and practice summarizing, which is a key skill in both listening and speaking. Another engaging scenario is participating in group discussions or debates. Picture yourself at a community forum where the topic is the impact of social media on daily life. A participant might begin by saying, "I believe social media has revolutionized the way we communicate, but it also presents challenges, such as privacy concerns." You might respond with, "I agree that social media has its benefits, but I'm curious about its effects on face-to-face interactions." Engaging in debates not only exposes you to different viewpoints, but also teaches you how to articulate your opinions clearly and respectfully. Reflect on any group discussions you have been a part of. What phrases did you use to express agreement or to politely disagree? Practice these phrases until you feel they have become an integral part of your conversational toolkit. Next, let's consider the practicalities of everyday shopping. Imagine entering a large department store and needing assistance to find an item. You might approach a sales associate and ask, "Excuse me, "Could you help me locate the electronics section?" The associate might reply, "Yes, it's on the second floor, near the home appliances area." Such interactions, though brief, are essential in daily life. They emphasize the use of polite inquiries, clear directions, and simple language. Visualize yourself in this scenario and practice the key phrases. How would you modify your request if you needed additional information, such as, "Could you please show me where that is?" Repeating these exchanges can make you more comfortable and confident in real-life shopping situations. Let's also look at scenarios where you might need to handle unexpected challenges. Imagine you are out with friends and suddenly the weather changes dramatically. You might hear someone say, "It looks like we're in for a downpour. Let's find some shelter." In such moments, clear and calm communication is essential. You might add, "I'll grab my umbrella," or ask, "Does anyone know where we can take cover?" These spontaneous conversations require you to be quick on your feet. Reflect on any unexpected situations you have encountered. How did you communicate in the moment? Practice these scenarios with a friend so that when the time comes, you feel ready to respond confidently and helpfully. Consider next a scenario involving a friendly debate on a light-hearted topic, such as discussing favorite cuisines. Imagine sitting at a dinner party where someone remarks, "Italian food is the best because of its rich flavors and incredible variety." You might respond, "I love Italian food too, but I'm also very fond of the spicy kick of Thai cuisine." This type of dialogue helps you practice comparing ideas and expressing your personal preferences. Notice the language used, words like rich, variety, spicy, and fond. These words add color and detail to your conversation. Ask yourself, which adjectives do you commonly use when describing food or other interests? Practice crafting sentences that incorporate these descriptive words to enhance your communication skills. Let's now transition to scenarios that involve nonverbal cues and body language. Even though our primary focus is on listening and speaking, nonverbal elements play a key role in communication. Picture a conversation where a friend is explaining an exciting news story. Even if you cannot see them during a phone call, imagine how their tone of voice conveys excitement. Their laughter, the slight pause before a punchline, and the change in pitch all signal their emotions. While practicing on your own, try to incorporate these elements. Smile as you speak, and notice how your tone of voice naturally changes. Even without a visual cue, these subtleties make your speech much more engaging and natural for the listener. We have now reached a point where each scenario builds upon the previous one, enriching your understanding of real-life English. As you continue your practice, remember that every single conversation is a stepping stone on your journey toward fluency. The everyday interactions we have discussed, from ordering food and asking for directions to engaging in professional meetings, participating in cultural events, and even handling unexpected situations, each offer valuable opportunities to practice and improve your listening and speaking skills. Imagine your future self, confidently navigating any situation, whether you are conversing with a stranger in a cafe or leading a critical meeting at work. Visualize the incredible progress you will make by immersing yourself in these varied scenarios, practicing key phrases, and learning from every single interaction. The more you expose yourself to natural, authentic English, the more intuitive and effortless your responses will become. If you found this detailed practice session helpful and want to continue improving your English with us, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, English in Fluency. We upload new episodes regularly to help you on your language learning journey, and we would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one of your own stories about learning English. What challenges have you faced? What successes have you celebrated? Your stories inspire us and help our entire community grow together. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to joining you again in our next episode. Keep practicing, stay curious, and you will achieve fluency. This is Alex from English in Fluency, signing off.